So thank you everyone for joining. I'm Sarah Bacon, the founder of RespectBI, and I want to thank our panelists and you community members for taking, panelists who are community members and all the community members for taking the time to join us this evening. RespectBI was founded in the summer of 2020 by a group of island residents, both full and part-time, in response to an alarming increase in traffic congestion and reckless roadway behavior and related injuries and death. Our aim is to help set an agenda that prioritizes maintaining the peaceful, unspoiled, and bucolic atmosphere of Block Island for generations to come. Just a quick aside, Tracy, would you mind texting Chris the same link you texted Dr. Warcup, please? Thank you so much. To that end, RespectBI's initiatives have included our first community discussion, which was in August 2020, on the island's relationship to mopeds. We had a panel including the then police chief, a town councilor, business owners, realtors, Dr. Warcup, former head of rescue, Lisa Sprague, and it was a very fulsome discussion. We had about 165 computers. Based on that discussion, we then drafted a memo to the town council with common sense recommendations for moped reform in the summer of 21. We surveyed island residents, over 630 respondents on prevailing sentiments around life on the island, and mopeds were perceived in that survey as the greatest challenge to the island. We filed an amicus brief in support of town's effort to implement 2021 moped ordinances after they were blocked by a judge. Alas, our emergency motion to intervene was denied by the judge due to an existing state statute, which we'll discuss later, a state statute regarding moped regulation. We've done an analysis of 5 years of police, rescue, and medical center data on moped crashes, all of which are trending upwards overall. We surveyed the hospitality sector on visitor transportation preferences. And last summer, we conducted a preliminary traffic study of all roadway users. This is all an effort to generate valuable data and research to help better understand the patterns on our island in an effort to create a more sustainable, safer community. And throughout all of our initiatives, which you can see at respectbi.org, see all those documents and reports, we have had stellar volunteers researching historical and legal precedents on moped regulation, both in Rhode Island and in other tourist communities. So that's a little background. Now, today, the reason we're having this event is before the 2022 season gets into full swing, RespectBI thought we'd resume the community conversation on public safety and mopeds. 2022 is a particularly important summer season as the consent agreement between town and the moped operators will expire on July 31st, 2022. So before and after this important date, our hardworking town council has some critically important strategic decisions to make with regard to the island's long-term relationship with mopeds. So let's get started. We invited these speakers because they all have unique firsthand eyewitness insights on the challenges that mopeds pose to public safety on the island. And I thought having their perspectives to start would set up the discussion that we hope to have about the pathway RespectBI feels is the most has the most potential for lasting moped reform. I want to make clear that our panelists are not here to endorse RespectBI's agenda, but rather to share their insights on the ongoing challenges our community faces vis-a-vis mopeds. And I'm really looking forward to hearing each of you speak for a few minutes. Dr. Warcup, would you like to kick us off?
Certainly. Thank you for inviting me to talk. As I spoke last time when we gathered together, we had some data for you to share with everyone on the grander community and the committee. So for 4 years, we've been tracking data for, now this is our 6th year. And for the first 5 years, 17, 18, 2019, and 2020, we definitely saw an increase. We went from 30 moped accidents to 39 to 39 up to 67 in 2020, which is when this all really came to fruition. Last year was the first time in those 5 years that we actually saw a decline. We had 25 moped related injuries last year, and I think a lot of it was due to increasing awareness, but the great work that Chief Moynihan has done with the police department with kind of keeping reckless behavior on the mopeds at bay, whether that be drinking or kind of nonsensical behavior on the mopeds. But what we identify here at the medical center, just from our perspective, is that it's a significant disruption to care delivery on the island, because we have to physically stop care that we're delivering to island visitors and residents, whether seasonal or year round, to provide this type of care. And over historically about 15% of all these accidents. So we've had 200 moped accidents over the last 5 years, and approximately 30 to 35 have to be transported off the island. Usually 11% of the total accident victims have to be transported by helicopter. The others can go by fixed wing or by ferry. But every time one of those transports happens, we have conveyed to the town council that it's approximately 5 man hours every single time we have one of those processes. So completely disruptive to, I think, both volunteer EMS, Tracy can speak to that, and Lisa Sprague, but from the medical center's standpoint, it really stops care delivery and puts a significant burden on the medical center to accomplish its other goals, which is caring for island residents and visitors that are not suffering from that kind of moped related injury.
Thank you so much for that concise overview. It seems like a natural follow-up for Chief Moynihan to speak. And if you'd like to speak directly to any of the stats Dr. Warcup just shared with us, please do.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and the members of RespectBI, and as well as everyone that joined the call tonight. As you know, by law, the mopeds are legal vehicles on our roadways, and as the chief, my goal has always been to ensure that they're being operated in a safe manner, and that the ordinance governing their use is well communicated and enforced consistently. That's really the message we tried to push out last year, and really be consistent with our messaging and our actions. All the members of our department are focused on enforcing the town's moped ordinances and emphasizing safe operations. As I've said before, enforcement is a range of actions from anywhere from reminding a motorist in providing a warning or issuing a ticket. And as we did in several occasions last year, actually had the impoundment of the mopeds based on bad behavior in violations of the traffic ordinances and laws. We don't, again, we don't have nearly enough police officers on Block Island to write a ticket for every infraction that may be observed or reported to us. But I am proud of the work that our team has done last year. All the officers, the CSOs, and really the public, and again, we're going to continue that moving forward this year, is to ask for everyone's help really in reporting that unsafe and bad behavior, because it makes our job easier to really crack down on the enforcement. We've kept a near constant presence on Weldon's Way. We're going to continue that again this year to monitor the instructions being provided to the riders and to ensure that the moped rental companies are operating appropriately. Although our community service officers cannot write tickets, they're an integral part of the enforcement team. They're our eyes and ears, as I said, and kind of a force multiplier to really our mission for our officers and, you know, to be able to really educate visitors about the ordinances. So, you know, as you all saw on any given day, you saw our CSOs down there on Weldon's Way, down in and around Water Street, talking to moped operators and advising them on the safe operations, whether it be wearing eyewear or helmets. And again, that will be our focus again moving into this season. I'd like to talk a minute about some of the specific actions the department has taken in the last year and the data that we had gathered in the process. In advance of the 2021 season, I set out to collaborate with the moped business owners, and we designed the numbering system so that bad operators could be identified and easily reported to police. I really value a lot of that whole process, and it really helped us a lot. And I spoke to the motor vehicle for hire group this morning and kind of advised them that, you know, we need our cab operators, the taxi operators, to also assist us and report bad behavior. But it's important that it's not just calling in, you know, a red moped that might be operating erratically on Corn Neck Road, but giving us specifics. And that numbering system allowed us to really hone in and have those specifics. And so again, we're going to be pushing that out and really asking for the public's help with identifying. So the numbering system in place really is when a witness makes a complaint, we know which rental company owns the moped, and I can advise them of the violation. You know, sometimes we're not always there to see the violation happening, but to be able to follow up afterwards with either whether we see it 5-10 minutes later, that operator on that specific bike, we can stop them and remind them of the reported bad behavior to us, and also circle back with the moped owners. And so again, that was very beneficial to us, and we'll continue that going into this season. In 2021, we had one incident that involved 21 mopeds being impounded. And we leveraged that on social media and the earned media to amplify this enforcement action. And I think, you know, it sends a clear message about safer operation. It sends a clear message that we're not going to tolerate that type of behavior. And, you know, from that coverage, you know, we saw that the mainland media outlets picked it up and really set the stage for us. And I think that was helpful, that in that one incident, we had 21 mopeds. In total, we impounded 48 mopeds in 2021. So, you know, I really think, again, if we come out strong and with strict enforcement and we kind of set the stage that it's not an anywhere goes type of community. You know, and just kind of reviewing the data, I went over this in my January report, but I'll just take a few minutes to share some of our 21 data collected regarding mopeds in our crash data. So of the 38 out of 66 motor vehicle collisions investigated involved mopeds. And when I talk about our investigation of crashes, state law dictates that law enforcement will investigate if there's any personal injury involving a motor vehicle, or if damage to any party may be in excess of $1,000. That's absent any type of hit and run or any other type of maybe single car vehicle crash that may have to do with impairment. But really, those are kind of the baseline of what dictates us to investigate. So again, 38 out of the 66 motor vehicle collisions that we investigated last year involved mopeds. Out of those 38, involved 31 reported injuries. 28 of the 31 resulted in injuries that the operator had rented the moped. So they came from the rental mopeds. And so, and we know this, we know that inexperience really drives a lot of the collisions, and in mopeds alone, being involved with any type of crash is most likely going to involve an injury. Again, our numbering system, we're able to really track what moped rental agencies are involved in these collisions. And I think that's very helpful too, because we can go back and talk about the training for these agencies or these individual companies. So 9 were rented from Miles Unlimited, and all 9 reported injuries. 9 were rented from Aldo's, and 7 out of the 9 reported injuries. And again, this is out of the 38. I'm sorry, this is out of out of 28 rentals. 8 were rented from Island Moped, and 5 out of the 8 reported injuries. 5 were rented from Moped Man, and 3 out of the 5 reported injuries. We had 4 that were rented out of Old Harbor, and all 4 of those operators reported injuries. We had 3 private moped collisions that we investigated, and 1 motorcycle that I think when we looked at our data, a lot of that got kind of combined together. But you know, again, I think it's important for us now when we look at it is Miles Unlimited and Aldo's had the most collisions reported with 9 apiece. But that really doesn't talk about how many, the volume that they're pushing out, how many operators that are out there. But it gives us some insight to go back to those companies and say, you know, there are a lot of crashes coming out of your specific, and maybe there's more attention that needs to be provided during the instructional phase. As we look to this coming season, the department's going to continue to look, as I said, to the community for help with our safety efforts on Block Island. We need residents and visitors to help us because we can't be everywhere. We don't have enough sworn officers to provide enforcement. And I really am going to continue that with pushing out that we need the public's help. Today, we launched our new tool called Tip 411. I spoke about this last year. We had it in place over the winter, but you know, just be the slow season. We launched it today. We put it out on social media. There's more to come that's going to, as far as publicizing this when the town launches the new website. But really what Tip 411 does is it allows a person to send an anonymous tip to the police via text. So really what we'd ask is if people can safely report to us if they spot a moped or any type of dangerous operation. And I'll give an example. They could see a moped number 203 being operated erratically. They could quickly send us a text message. They type in 847411 in the body, and I'm sorry, in the body of the text, they type in NSPD tip, and then a brief description of what they observed. So it could be moped number 203 was observed swerving on Corn Neck Road, honking its horn, and the driver not wearing a helmet. We'll get that tip immediately. We'll be able to push that out to the officers, the CSOs, and really kind of track down and identify where that operator is. I want to emphasize that, you know, the tip 411 is not an emergency number. It's for non-emergencies, but I think it's going to work very, very well for these situations with the erratic mopeds. We'd still emphasize that in an emergency, you know, that you call 911, or you can call directly our landline at the police station. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about tip 411 and the text system is we're going to get these alerts instantly, and it really lessens the demand on our dispatchers who become really overworked in the summertime with other related calls to the police department. So we're excited about that. And again, there'll be, it's currently, the information is on our website, but we'll continually be messaging that throughout the summer and really encouraging people to use that. As I noted earlier, all the members of our department are engaged in our strategy to ensure that mopeds are operated safely in accordance to our town ordinances. I'm pleased to report that we requested and received funding for additional personnel that will allow us to continue to build on our success from last summer. I do want to really highlight that the troopers from the state police are a key part of our summer team and help us maintain order. And I need them and stress that I need them to be here this summer to support our efforts. And I'm hopeful that the current discussion that is going on between the town and the state will reach an agreement very soon, and so we can really plan forward and move ahead as we and continue with the progress that we had made last year.
Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you.
I, on behalf of everyone, and I'm not the first to say this, there was just a radical improvement last summer with your enforcement, and this tip 411 or 847411 is a really exciting development. And thank you for breaking that down. I wanted to ask you and Dr. Warcup and the other panelists to take a moment just to think, and we'll do a round robin after everyone has spoken, about what ordinance, additional ordinance you could help your job with regard to mopeds, if you could pick one. And if someone picks the one you would suggest, if you have a backup, I'd be curious to hear that in this discussion. One quick administrative detail, Chris Littlefield, can you just make yourself known so I can spotlight you as the 5th panelist, please?
I'm here.
Okay, great. What's the
Can you
name
hear
of your
me?
device? Yeah, what's the name of your device?
Chris.
Okay, there you are. Great. Thank you. Tracy, would you like to say a few words, please? Thank you. And also one more reminder to everyone, if you could please mute while the panelists are speaking. Thank you.
All right, so I'm just gonna kind of give you a perspective of what it's like to respond to these moped accidents. First, I just want to say that we are a all-volunteer rescue squad. We currently have 16 active EMTs that live on the island and that are members of the rescue squad. In the summertime, when it's busy, we tend to get a few more who come out and volunteer. So just to give you an idea of how really small of a group we are. One thing I want to really is that, we always hear about, oh, there's so many moped accidents, and, it depends on the year, and Dr. Warcup gave us, the stats from the last couple of years. But I just want to mention that, these are not accidents to be taken lightly in any way. If you're not there, you don't really understand some of the severity of the injuries that these people are suffering. And they're coming out for a nice day to have fun on the island, and unfortunately, a lot of people get very hurt. We're not just talking road rash, we're talking broken arms, broken legs, lacerations, head injuries, unfortunately, even death in one case a couple years ago. So I just wanted to make that point also. So a typical call, just to give you an idea, can take upwards of an hour to several hours, depending on the call itself and how many people are involved. As one quick example, a couple years ago, there was one moped accident call that was 3 people ended up being injured, and ultimately life started off, all 3 of them. It was 2 people on a moped that had hit somebody else who was walking down the street. So just to give you an idea of how that impacts the rescue squad, that's 3 ambulances, all at the same time, with at least a dozen people, fire and rescue, responding and helping with this call, not to mention the impact it has on the medical center. That call took almost most of the day, just coordinating the helicopters and getting them from point A to point B. But that's a huge resource, grab on the rescue department. So I'm just trying to give you a sense of how much a call like that could really burden us. And if anything else came up, all 3 ambulances were in use at that. So we couldn't respond to anything else at that moment. And again, like I mentioned, these people are flown off in a helicopter. That's 1, expensive. 2, their injuries are so much that, it can be life-changing for some people. But it does place a big burden on us in responding to these types of calls over and over again. It plays with you emotionally. You hate to get to a call and you see people that, they're just like, they had no idea. They're like, 9 times out of 10, almost every call we hear, oh my God, I had no idea. I should not have done this. I will never do this again. They weren't qualified to operate this machinery. I mean, even some people, they have a motorcycle license and they were just surprised by how unresponsive these mopeds are and how difficult they are to drive. They don't turn well, as some of the things that we've been told. But just hearing people tell you that over and over again, their vacation's over. Or, unless they're not really injured, but a lot of times they have to leave. And they, physical therapy or whatever, depending on what the injury is. So it's hard to see that over and over again. You want people to come out here and really enjoy the island, see the beauty of the island, and not be injured because, you know, they got on a moped that they didn't know how to operate. I really think an experience is what we hear people are telling us that lead to the crash. I'm kind of surprised sometimes that there aren't more accidents, and not that anybody ever wants that, but I guess anything that we could do to, you know, make the calls go down would be beneficial to everybody involved. So other things that affect these calls affect the rescue squad is, you know, the time that we put in. Every single patient, there's a whole reporting system that's involved. We lose a lot of equipment that goes off island that we never get back. So that's also a financial burden. But I think it's really just the most important thing is just not having these injuries happen. You know, if there's any way to bring that number down, that would be the goal. You know, I would like to just imagine, you know, take a second and think about what it would be like to have a summer without any moped accidents.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It sounds like you're pointing toward training, better training on how to operate these vehicles, and fostering a greater sense of awareness of the potential risks that are involved in riding one of them if you aren't fully competent as an operator.
And that's something that's mentioned by just about every single person who gets injured on one. Just to make that. Thanks.
It's really important. Thank you. Chris Littlefield, I wanted to call on you to speak about your experience as a resident of next to the North Light, and also your farmers market stand location at an intersection where a number of accidents have happened, and as a concerned citizen. You just got to unmute yourself.
There we go. Well, thank you, Sarah. I also want to thank Tracy and the present and past members of the rescue squad, because you know, what I've witnessed is nothing compared to what they've had to deal with, and it's really it's unconscionable that this community has to deal with such. It's tragic, is what it is. Anyway, I'll be brief, but we have farm stands in various locations on the neck, and also at Veterans Park. Farmers Market moved there 3 or 4 years ago, and we're right near the intersection of West Side Road and Center, and there are a remarkable number of people on mopeds that can't negotiate a left or right hand turn coming off of Center Road onto West Side. I think we witnessed about 4 accidents last year, probably 3 or 4 the year before. And, you know, the market's open for 2.5 hours. The mopeds don't even show up till about 10 o'clock. So it's got me wondering how many accidents go unreported. And it's a sickening sound to hear these people come out and they can't make that turn, and they hit the curb, and you hear a terrible smack, whether they've got the helmet on or whatever. Anyway, it's got to stop. And I think we as a community can do that. And interestingly, the other locations, when people are going in a straight line, they do fairly well. I've never seen an accident of moped on Corneck Road going by a farm stand that I've been at. So that's kind of interesting. And just echoing Tracy, I don't think they're properly trained. I don't think they're even close to being able to operate those vehicles effectively. And it's men and women. So I'll leave it at that and let someone else speak.
Thanks for that, Chris. I appreciate it. Mary, would you like to round out this? As a business owner on Water Street, you witness a lot of traffic of people just learning how to ride their mopeds, or at the end of the day. And I know a whole spectrum of behavior comes along with that. And we'd
Yeah.
love to hear your perspective on this. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Thanks. My video is going on and off, but I'll fix that as I can. Yeah, thanks, Sarah, and thanks for RespectBI Island and fellow panelists. And it's nice to join also people who are on the call on Zoom. So I appreciate everybody's time. What I thought I would speak to today is just my experience in listening to people on Water Street. In particular, as we all know, Water Street absorbs all of the flood of visitors that are coming up from the boat, and they're dispersing to homes and rentals and hotels and the beach and bike and moped rentals. And the volume of visitors it is so high. I thank the police department every day on Water Street because they're directing that traffic, and it goes much smoother than it used to. And what I'm sort of commenting on is, it's nothing you don't already know, everyone on this call, I'm sure, that there are a lot of complaints. It's just that I'm at the Glass Onion, so I hear a lot of the complaints on the street. And the thing that startled me in the last 4 or 5 years is it's a kind of deep sorrow that people are expressing to me of the nuisance of the mopeds. They're overwhelmed by the noise. They're often riding in clusters or in groups, one behind the other, with no helmets or no apparent regard really to the people that they're sharing the road with. And I guess I want to share that with you because to me that's what I hear from people either shopping or just walking the street, or people that I've known over the years. And I just think it's really important for us as a community, in this unique community, to to think about how frustrated people are coming to a place that they've considered a very beautiful, quiet, unique place to come to relax. And it just trips us into the bigger questions of how do we do this better? How do we continue to host so many visitors, so many vehicles? How do we maintain this special, unique place? How do we share the road with so many vehicles without redesigning the roads, but at the same time keeping visitors safe on the roads? And the police do a great job at that. And really, when you think about the community, I think also is the reason why people come, because people are nice here, and it's a beautiful place to come and to relax and to see people that are local or visitors that they've known over the years. And I know, so much work has been done by locals or local nonprofits and by people, elected officials that are working very hard to look at these problems. And I guess I just am here today to say, keep going, because it's really, the noise and the nuisance is really affecting visitors in a way that I have not seen them affected before, where they're so discouraged and so sad to see this very special place change in a way that makes them feel less safe and less interested in coming back. And I think we owe it to the people who've lived here for many generations. I am not one. And to so many people who've spent tireless hours and dollars to help keep the unique culture intact. And we need to figure this out, how we can share our safety with people, how we can share this place with people. So really, that's just my comment from the street, what I hear on the street. And I'm across from one of the moped rentals. I love those guys. They're the guys who helped me break into my car when I locked my keys in it. So it's not personal. It's just, how do we do this better and safely?
Thank you so much, Mary.
Yes,
And
sure.
thank you. So it sounds to me as if part of our preliminary traffic study showed that we have a messaging problem on the island, roadway messaging on how to share the road. And that is the case and ought to be addressed. But I think the larger picture is we have a branding, should have a code of conduct. RespectBI comes to mind, but something along those lines. This is a magical place and people come to experience that magical place. It's something that I know a lot of members of the community are thinking about. And your comments speak to that, how to project our values to our visitors, and how much, and ask them to love the place that we love so much that they come to appreciate.
Yeah, and if I could just say, I agree with you. If I can just say really quickly, and I'll let someone else speak. I think people that I hear from on the street are looking for, they're confused. They're like looking for this to change. How are you going to make this change? Who can make this change? Who's going to protect this place? It's very unique. So I found that interesting too. They want to come back. They don't want to throw up their hands and not come back. It's very special to a lot of people. That's all.
Thank you. How could it not be if it's so special to us? I wanted to loop back to Dr. Warcup, Chief Moynihan, just to ask you if you had one ordinance that you believe would really improve the landscape that you are confronted with. What would it be?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think the first part would be there's a definite causality with the chief's plan of impounding mopeds for reckless behavior. The numbers are staggering how many were confiscated. And to me, a significant portion of those people would have gone on to a bodily injury, potentially coming to the medical center. So the proactive nature, I think, is excellent. And I appreciate those efforts, and we should support the police department in any effort they need for that. With understanding that there's a lot of nuance of what you can do and what you can't accomplish around the mopeds, I would say if there's one ordinance, it's the helmet enforcement. That it has to be on at all time and it has to be buckled. And because that would prevent two major issues for us: head injury that results in a seizure, or a head injury resulting in a loss of consciousness. Both of those are going to require them to be flown off the island. And I can't, I mean, Tracy and the chief and many others would know how many times you see somebody with a helmet with their strap flapping in the wind, or it's so loosely tied that it's basically on the back of their head, which doesn't prevent their forward injury. And then it would also prevent neck injuries and lacerations that may or may not lead to them needing higher level of care as well. So if there's one ordinance that I would say would work for me, from my perspective, is helmets to be worn at all time and properly buckled.
Yes, Sarah, just to
not made that distinction. We've done such a good job of enforcing helmets, but that they're not worn properly is a huge concern. Thank you for that.
Sarah, just to follow that up also, I mean, I'll just echo Dr. Warcup's comments. I mean, from my standpoint, it's really just strict enforcement and being consistent with our enforcement. Again, I feel that the impoundment was very helpful. I think it's more than an $85 ticket when someone goes and they, you know, I can tell you, last year we impounded a series of 5 in one stop. They just pretty much driven away from the rental agency. They probably had the mopeds for about 5 minutes, and they had rented it for the day. So they were out hundreds of dollars by just impounding them. And so, you know, and that's for each of the operators. And I think that that's really effective to us, because a lot of times what happens is you issue a ticket and someone doesn't pay the ticket, it just goes unpaid, and really the penalties really never sink home on their bad behavior, as opposed to, nope, you've lost your privilege to operate because of your actions, and so we're immediately going to take it away from you. And I think that's really effective to do it that way.
Thank you for that. And it sounds like communicating that consequence to people who rent mopeds is also really important, that there are real consequences for jerking around. One other thing I wanted to add is Tracy, Dr. Warcup, Chief Moynihan, it sounds like all of your services need more support. And one way to do that is by raising the licensing fees so that a higher portion from these operations help support the triage that is necessary sometimes from behavior on roadways. That's my impression. It's 6:46. We started a little late. I'd like to move into the second part of the discussion. I mentioned earlier, I thank our panelists greatly, and I hope you'll stay for the second part of the discussion if you have the time. I know you're all very busy. We wanted to talk about some of the research that we've been doing since our founding, which is a combination of historical and legal on the history of moped regulation, on how mopeds are regulated and controlled in other tourist communities, see what precedents are out there, see what leeway, if any, our town council might have to address this beyond the consent agreement, which has been binding for the last 5 years, and this latest iteration of the consent agreement for almost 2 decades now. So we've been doing this research, and I'd like to introduce my colleague, Tony Kronman, who is a professor at Yale Law. He does not represent RespectBI in any official way. He is a citizen of the island and a friend of RespectBI, and has led this legal volunteer research effort and led his student and colleague, Hannah Carrese, who is also with us tonight. So Tony, if you could explain what RespectBI has determined, largely based on your research, the island's potentially most promising pathway forward at this particular juncture on the eve of the expiration of the consent agreement between the moped operators and town. And after Tony, you explain that, we'll open up to questions via chat from people on this call about this potential pathway. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Sarah. I can be very brief. What I have to report is, I'm sure, well known to most of you already. But before I begin, I want to join Sarah in thanking Dr. Warcup and Chief Moynihan, Tracy, all the members of the rescue squad. You all are really on the front line and deal with this problem in a day-to-day and physical way. And the rest of us are here to help you and support you and make your job easier. You really make this an absolutely wonderful place to live, and you have my deepest gratitude. Block Island since 1986 has had a home rule charter, which under the Rhode Island state constitution gives the town the power to pass ordinances concerning all matter of local issues, but subject to several restrictions, the most important of which is the non-existence of some supervening or preempting state statute, which takes that power away from the town, either in generally or more specifically. With respect to mopeds, 2 years before we passed our home rule charter in 1984, the Rhode Island state legislature passed a statute governing the rental and use of mopeds on Block Island. And that led to some litigation. It went back and forth. The litigation was finally settled in the late 90s. And in 1997, the town and all 5 operators entered into a consent decree, which provided basically a contractual framework under which the town and the operators would proceed going forward. And that first agreement was to last for 5 years. It's been renewed several times. And the latest iteration comes to an end this summer at the end of July, which is why, from a legal point of view, this summer presents the town with a very special opportunity that it hasn't had now for some time. The agreement is relevant because one of its provisions is a stipulation by the town and by the moped operators that none of them will go to the Rhode Island State Legislature to seek a change or adjustment or amendment in the existing statute that deals with mopeds during the period that the agreement is in effect. So the town has been contractually barred from going to the legislature and asking it, inviting it to rethink the scope of the powers that the legislature has given to the town to regulate moped rental and use. And from the town's point of view, that has been a real constraint because the Rhode Island courts have on several occasions interpreted the state statute pretty narrowly against the town to confine or restrict what the town is able to do by way of moped regulation. So the lapsing of the agreement this summer, the freedom on the town's part to go back to the legislature and ask for a review or perhaps even a do-over with respect to its authorization of our powers to regulate mopeds. This is, I think, a very important moment for the town council to reflect generally on what it might wish to achieve in the near term, but also in the longer future as well, with respect to mopeds on Block Island, and to consider seriously reaching an agreement with the operators that might, for example, continue certain aspects of the existing agreement as a kind of status quo arrangement, but freeing the town and the operators too from their waiver of the right to go back to the state legislature. This is all coming up. It will be on the table for the town council to deliberate about and reflect on. And I'm not recommending that it follow one particular course rather than another. That will be for the councilors themselves to decide. I think we can all have some constructive input into their deliberations. But this really is a time of exceptional opportunity for the council and therefore for the island as a whole to rethink this question on a larger scale than we've been able to do for the past 5 years, or indeed since the consent agreement has been in place since 1997. So I think we might want to consider urging the town council to paint on a broader canvas. And to do that, it needs to have the canvas to work with. And to do that, it means that the town has to be given more running room to regulate moped rental and use than it currently has under the existing state statute. I think most of these facts, as I say, are pretty well known to all of you already, but as background, I hope it's helpful in underscoring that we do have this summer a real opportunity before us, or the council does. And at a minimum, I think it's important for the town to consider what to do with this opportunity, what to make of it, if anything.
Thank you so much, Tony, for that lucid explanation. I would like to open up the chat for questions for Tony and our researcher, Hannah Carrese, who is a third-year Yale Law student who's done the bulk of this research. These are legally related questions on home rule, on the state statute for mopeds that we believe ought to be rewritten to foster truly lasting home rule and regulatory power over mopeds. So please take a minute to write your questions in. My co-host Hope Reeves will be moderating those questions and will read some out to me in a second. While you write, I'd like to share a way in which you all 92 of you on this call, to whom I'm grateful for spending some of your Tuesday night, can use your voices. So RespectBI is going to be launching and circulating a petition, both digitally and in paper, in the coming months, and the petition will ask our town council to begin working with Rhode Island state legislatures the day the consent agreement expires to rewrite that statute, which, as Tony explained, has restricted town from using its home rule to improve public safety around mopeds and other roadway issues. And this petition, with hopefully many signatures, we're hoping a good percentage of our community, both full-time and part-time, will then be presented to the town council. So if you want to make sure that you sign this petition, or would like to volunteer to collect signatures in person, please email info@respectbi.org. And I want to just reiterate Tony's remarks that it is town council who's in the best position to decide what provisions it needs to regulate mopeds for greater public safety. I think some great ideas have already come up. There are already great ideas they tried to enact with ordinances last spring in 2021. Maybe there can even be an open forum this summer led by the town council to solicit more recommendations for community solutions process. But RespectBI has collected all of the solutions that we've been made aware of and presented them in some form to the town council. And we will continue to do this. So if you have proposed something in the chat or would like to email something to us, we will be collecting those and presenting them at a later date. So I'm going to turn now to see if you do have questions. Hope, would you like to take a stab, read them to us?
Sure. So far we have 2 questions related to the legal issues. I'm not, maybe the askers can clarify because I'm not entirely sure what the questions mean, but the first question is the town legally prohibited from denying the right to rent mopeds? I'm not sure if
Hannah or Tony, would you guys like to address this, or would you like clarification?
I turn to my learned colleague, Hannah. I think maybe you can answer that question.
Not too learned, but there's a quick answer to that question, which is that state law, which is section 19.3 of Title 31, which is the state law that regulates motor vehicles, requires essentially that the town not prohibit motor vehicles. And that's because if a law passed by the state requires that the town do something to regulate those motor vehicles, the assumption is that they're allowed on the island. And so that's one reason that the motor vehicles, that mopeds have to be allowed on the island under the current state law. And the second is that there's this consent agreement between the town and the moped operators, which comes out of a court case that was settled in 1997. And that's the settlement that will expire in late July of this year. And so for both of those reasons, there's no opportunity for the town to prohibit moped rentals.
I would just add to that, mopeds have been on Block Island for a very long time now. Businesses have been renting them for decades. And if the town, even putting the statute to one side, if the town were all of a sudden to say, you're out of business, I'm sorry, you can't rent them anymore, the owners of the moped operators would have potentially a good legal claim that this amounted to a taking of a property interest that they had acquired over the years. And they could sue the town for an unconstitutional taking of property without compensation under the Rhode Island Constitution. It's another possibility. So they have a bunch of different legal grounds, statutory and constitutional, to resist an attempt on the town's part to abolish moped rentals altogether. But that's not to say that the town is, if the statute were adjusted, changed, amended, that the town is prevented from reducing the number of licensees or the number of mopeds that each licensee can rent, or requiring that some number of mopeds be converted to electric bikes, or whatever. All of those are, I suppose, at least conceptual possibilities if the statute were relaxed to give the town greater freedom and flexibility.
Thank you. On that note, we have a question. Is there a current limit to the number of mopeds allowed per operator?
Yes.
There is, under that settlement agreement, there's a cap of 34 mopeds per operator. That's just under the settlement agreement. So the state law doesn't establish any limit. And in fact, it says the town can establish its own limit on the number of mopeds per license owner. The settlement agreement also establishes the number of licenses for moped rental businesses will be set at 5 licenses, which is the current number.
And the rest of the question is this something the town could implement? It does more stringently. I guess maybe one of the concerns is that really being regulated and monitored? And I'm not sure any of us can answer that, but that they really do stick to the number of mopeds that they're allowed. And is there any way to know that they are?
I mean, I think that would be a question for the chief of police. But yeah, the town does have a cap on the number of mopeds now, and so could enforce that limit theoretically.
I think, Chief, your numbering system is aimed at doing exactly that, correct?
Yes, I mean, I'm sorry, I caught the last part of that question, but I think what you said is, how do we regulate to ensure that there's only the authorized number out there? And that's exactly it, is the numbering system. Each rental company is issued 34 moped stickers. So anytime a rental moped is out there without a sticker, we didn't have one incident last year where that happened. They've all been really warned to the fact of, they would be in jeopardy of really pushing, violating their contract, the agreement that they're only allowed to have 34 out there. And so, before they had the little medallions on the plates and things like that, and they were moving them around. The stickers can't be removed and moved from one moped to the other. They're numbered specifically that they all have just 34. So that really helps us, that if we know which one's the rental mopeds, and again, if they don't have that black sticker, there's really going to be a real problem. I would be very surprised if any of them jeopardize that by putting a moped out there that's not one of the ones that we authorize to be out there.
And I will add, before the chief's arrival in 2020, RespectBI, we did some observation at the moped operators, and we did see that there were mopeds with two labeled 22 at the same operation. And we rented mopeds and went through the contract and the training to see what that process was like. And when one felt too heavy to me, I was told, hang on, and someone brought a moped over from a shed elsewhere off-site with the same number, a duplicate number for one that was already on site. So that used to happen. And it does seem as if this numbering system has been extremely effective. And the system, just to be clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, is like 100 for Aldos. So it's 100-1 through 34, 200 for a moped man. I'm making this up, but that's how they know.
That's
that-
exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
They're all identified. They all have a series. So the 100 series, the 200 series is specific to the moped company. And again, Sarah, that was one of the things when I first came here is there was no way for us to know how many mopeds a company was putting out there. And that's one of the more important parts of the numbering system is that holds them true to that 34 number. If a moped goes down, we have yellow temporary ones that happened probably 5 or 6 occasions last year that if they had a moped that was out of service, say moped 204 was out, we would go down there, we'd make note that 204 was out, all the officers would know that, and then would issue a temporary one to another moped that was out there. And as soon as 204 came back online, if that was the case, they fixed it, brought it back on, we'd go down and take the orange stickers off. I'm sorry, the yellow temporary stickers off. So, Sarah, I know there's a lot of questions in the chat. I have to run over to a town council meeting. Anyone who has a question, please feel free to contact me at the police station. Stop in. I'm happy to answer. There's some real good questions in there, and I'd like to answer those. It's just time doesn't allow right now. But again, I just want to push that. Anyone who would want to contact me, call the station or stop in. I'm more than happy to speak with you.
Thank you so much, Chief, for your time and for that willingness. Thank you. I would like to go through a few more questions. We still have a critical mass here and we have a load of questions.
We have one back from, sorry, Sarah, I just wanted to get to one of the earlier ones to make sure we didn't miss it. What are the barriers to requiring an alcohol breath test for moped operators?
It looks to me, Hannah, you don't have an answer to this, do you?
I think there are barriers, and I've elucidated some of those in a memo that I wrote a few months ago. I don't remember quite the specifics that I was trying to elucidate in that memo, but I'm happy to send them to you, Sarah, to refresh and then to send them out.
Okay,
Just so I don't say anything that's inaccurate.
We can get back to the asker on that. I know that having breathalyzer kits at the police station has been an issue. That the supply has not been as great as the chief would have liked. He and I discussed that last summer. And you need probable cause also in order to administer a breathalyzer test. So you can't do it preemptively if someone happens to be driving out of the Ballard's parking lot. You need to see evidence that they are intoxicated.
Another question, can the town be held liable by moped renters for the unsafe conditions that may lead to accidents? Lack of education related to risks.
Hannah?
Yeah,
Tony?
theoretically, yes. I mean, there have been suits. In Martha's Vineyard, there was a suit, I think, filed last year by the family of a young man who died, I believe. And I think there was another suit filed by the family or by a young woman who lost part of her leg. So yes, there have been suits filed against towns for failure to properly train operators.
The operators are required to carry insurance, but of course, if the insurance is inadequate, the question of the town's liability remains. And as not just a theoretical, but an actual matter, towns do get sued in similar circumstances, as Hannah was just observing on Martha's Vineyard.
Well, and I believe New York City was sued. There were 2 deaths with Revel, the e-scooter company, a couple summers ago. So the city of New York halted operations, and then Revel came back with a whole new protocol for training, which included a mandatory training video and a questionnaire that renters had to fill out.
So we have another question. Could the town require a motorcycle safety course? I guess for renters to be qualified to rent?
Hannah and Tony, do you have a response to that?
Yes, I believe the town could, especially under an amended statute that gave it a little more leeway to enact reasonable ordinances pertaining to the safety of the operation of mopeds on the island. Right. I mean, this is one good reason to go back to the state legislature and have the statute rewritten to make it clear that a requirement of that sort of training requirement would be within the scope of the town's authority so far as mopeds are concerned.
Thank you. That's been one of RespectBI's biggest pushes, is mandatory training videos and a questionnaire based on those videos that renters need to fill out before they are given access to a moped, to show that they have a full, with a certain percentage of right answers, show they have a full understanding of safety protocols. And I believe it was part of the town's council's proposed ordinances, the past ordinances, which were blocked, not the questionnaire, but this training video, which were blocked last spring by a judge.
Yeah.
That's
And
what I
Sarah,
was
if I could just make one short observation. The number of mopeds is capped, but each moped can and typically is rented several times over during the course of a single day. And for each new renter, a training procedure of some kind is appropriate, but that takes time. And the operators are reluctant to carve out the significant amount of time during the course of the day that would be required to train and educate 3 or 4 or 5 different operators of the very same vehicle. So from the operator's point of view, they want to reduce training to a bare minimum because of the time it involves, which becomes a matter of concern when you're turning the moped over every couple of hours to a new renter.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple more questions. One, again, relating to the breathalyzer. So if I understand correctly, it cannot be stipulated that before renting a breathalyzer needs to be passed.
That's correct. You need probable cause. That's correct.
There's also the issue that there's nothing to stop them from drinking while they're riding the moped or during the day after they've rented.
That's right. In town, they had a bracelet rule, which the operators proposed as a kind of stopgap strategy the summer of 2020. But bartenders don't necessarily abide by them. You wear a bracelet, you're given a bracelet, you go into a bar, it's hard to refuse someone a drink. There are lots of ways around these bracelets, essentially.
And we have a question: when a moped is impounded, is it returned to the operator immediately? If so, this appears to provide a windfall as more than 1 day's rental can be achieved. Is it possible to immobilize the machine to prevent re-rental, therefore removing the incentive and providing an incentive to do better instruction?
I think that's a fabulous idea, and we will include that in recommendations to the town council. I think that's and also it should be shared with the chief. I see that comes from Sam Bird, but I think that's a great recommendation. And Lisa Sprague, one of our RespectBI members, also had an interesting idea I wanted to offer up, which is an out-of-the-box consideration that if we must live with mopeds on the island, that we research the possibility of using the airport property to move all of the moped businesses to that location, have a standardized training area, have the businesses shuttle their customers to that location. This would eliminate the influx of barely trained drivers from starting their adventure in the congestion of town, and would turn them out on less trafficked roads in the center of the island, giving people a bit more time to familiarize themselves with the roads and the moped. I also feel very strongly about a standardized safety video that would be watched on a smartphone, the ferry, or prior to even getting on the bike at the training area. Yeah, I just want to respond to that, my friend Lisa, which is we've long been pushing for contained off-road training sites. And part of the ordinances that town passed, common sense ordinances, I would say, was a requirement for moped operators to submit where they planned on training their customers off-site, submit a proposal for that location. That never happened because the ordinances were blocked. That is still a goal. The training should not remain on Weldon's Way. It's long been a controversy in the community that it's happened there for so long. And I do believe that a statute amending the state statute could allow for a town to enact rules about training sites, where training could take place, what type of training, what the requirements are around training, et cetera, et cetera. And I absolutely agree that that standardized video should be disseminated as broadly as possible. Ideally, required when you log on to a moped operator's site to look into a rental before your trip. Things like this on the iPhone, as you suggested, Lisa, on the ferry. Of course, the ferry is privately owned, so that's a whole other arrangement. But thanks for recommending those ideas.
Oh, okay, sorry. Another question, could legal costs be an impediment to the town council's decision? How could Respect Block Island head this off?
Well, legal costs of working with the state legislators to rewrite the statute. I'm looking for clarification on that question. Or potential costs of having protect itself. Should it be sued again by the moped operators? I guess I'm wondering what costs that person is referring to. Other than time and labor, I don't believe there is a cost to working with state legislators, perhaps hiring a lobbyist, which town has already done and budgeted for. But maybe others have thoughts on this. I'm not fully informed. Okay, any and all costs to fight and negotiate with the operator. Yeah, it's costly. I mean, we're in a legal battle all last summer, and it is costly. And this is, town has counsel, and they have insurance for this reason, and there are costs to cover, that's for sure, when you're engaged with litigious parties. To our end, RespectBI raised money last year to engage attorneys who had a long history in Rhode Island, based in Rhode Island, and that was it was our goal was to file an amicus brief to the judge who had blocked the ordinances, but because of that state statute that we have referred to, the judge denied our brief, saying that town was doing everything within its power and on behalf of the community within the parameters of the state statute. So again, this is another reason that state statute needs to be amended. If I explained that correctly, if I didn't explain that correctly, Tony, please correct me. Okay.
So Sarah, I'm going to ask my own question since I'm asking the questions. What can people on this call do to help further this cause?
Well, that's a great question. So tell your friends and neighbors about this discussion. Keep an eye out for our petition. If you agree that amending this statute is the right path, if we've made that case, please, 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 please sign the petition. If you don't see it at big, or if you don't, it doesn't get emailed to you, please email us at info@respectbi.org, and we will make sure that you get it either digitally or to tell you where you can sign it in person. Please tell your friends. And if the value of amending this statute is clear to you, please just spread the word. We need as many signatures as possible. This is the summer, the opportunity to push for this. It is the moment. We have a really engaged community. We care about it. It is the moment. July 31st, this agreement expires and town is freed. So are the operators, and they might lobby legislators too, but we have to use our voice if we care about our islands and if we care about this issue. And for that, I'm really grateful to you all for attending and listening and passing along this strategy and this tactic, and refer back to us if you're confused. We'll be posting this video online. Feel free to share it. It'll be on respectbi.org. I'll send it to our email list, but please tell your friends to keep an eye out for the petition, clarify if they're confused. And again, we're always happy to clarify if you want to reach out to us directly.
And I think you have to be a registered voter on Block Island to sign the petition, or for it to be, no.
No, that's not the case. That was the case had we been pushing for home rule, but we already
Okay.
have home rule. So you can be a part-time, full-time resident. Every signature counts, every single one. And our plan is to then present that petition, as many signatures as possible, to the town and say, this is what your community wants. Please consider this very seriously and generate as much pressure as we can. We will be bringing the petition and the story behind it to the media to generate pressure. We will be attending town council meetings and letting our followers know over the course of the summer to attend if they are able, to keep the pressure on. This is a campaign we're launching today that will climax on July 31st. So I thank you guys for engaging and caring and spreading the word and staying in touch. I really do.
Can I just, there's one final question that I think is a good way to end. Are there any downsides to consider in amending the statute? Is there any reason, any way that we could actually harm ourselves?
Great question.
It is a good question. If we're free to lobby the state legislature, the moped operators are as well. And conceivably, if they were able to bring great pressure to bear, they might persuade the legislators to enact a statute that was even more restrictive from our perspective. I don't think that's likely, but it's a risk, and it ought to be acknowledged. One might say, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. We have a statute that we've lived with rather uncomfortably for a long time now, but at least we know it, and we've achieved a kind of a modus vivendi. It's not a very happy one, but we're getting by. And better that than something even worse and more onerous than the statute that we now have. But I think we just have to be confident that if we take our case to the state legislature, we've got a good one, a strong case, a stronger case than the operators themselves, and we will prevail because good sense and reasonableness and fair-mindedness will prevail. So a risk, yes, but a risk worth taking, in my view.
And you, as everyone on this call heard earlier from our panelists, we have scads of testimonials of the problems that our current system poses, not just from tonight, but from the police's annual report, the medical center's annual report, from correspondence that RespectBI followers have written town council from numerous town council meetings. We have the data, we have the evidence to support this. So, and this petition will be a part of that. So I really encourage you to find the petition, seek it out, share, spread the word, share the link, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to thank our panelists who are still here with us, Tracy, Tony, Hannah, Mary, Chris, and the chief, and Dr. Warcup for taking time and supporting this movement to really improve the safety and quality of life on our island. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
And thank everyone for tuning in. And please keep in touch. info@respectbi.org. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.